This is FE Peer Review. The date is December the 1st, 2023. Pablo's dog. Wash, rinse, repeat. A few days ago, Pablo's dog channel put out a new video called Afternoon Pan. Here we see it. I left him a little comment describing a few of my concerns about his video, and this video I'm making now basically covers the same territory and a little more, and in a little more detail. So Pablo's dog, wash, rinse, repeat. Why wash, rinse, repeat? Well, Pablo's dog is basically a one-trick pony. It seems that most of his videos he's doing pretty much the same thing. I'll show you briefly what his modus operandi is. Take a look here on Google Earth. He has a spot at the parking lot at UC Santa Barbara, University of California, Santa Barbara, which is on the left side of the screen here. And he sets up his camera there. I think he's using a P1000, might be a P900, I'm not sure. Anyhow, sets up his camera and surveys the coastline to the east-southeast of Santa Barbara. I've traced out some of the lines of landmarks that he's looking at. And take a look over here at where he sets up. This is the campus of UC Santa Barbara. Absolutely beautiful spot. One of my favorite places in California. Santa Barbara is a beautiful town. Here's the parking lot. Here's the coastline. By my estimate, he doesn't mention an elevation in this video. By my estimate, his setup is probably at, the parking lot is at about 50-foot elevation, and his setup is probably about 55 feet, assuming he's standing up using a tripod. Google Earth sets the elevation of the ground level at 53 feet where I've got the mouse, but it does vary by a few feet one way or the other in the parking lot. And then, of course, you've also got the tides. So I'm just estimating 55 feet for his camera. Now let's take a little closer look at this just so you can see the terrain a little better. This should give you a little better view of the terrain. We've got the beach down here, and then there's kind of a bluff. There's a fairly large two-story building, 2 or 3 stories. They're quite high stories up on top of the bluff, and the parking lot's up there as well. So I think based on that, a 55-foot eye level is a reasonable estimate. And what he's going to be looking at over the course of his video is there's a view towards Muscle Shoals, which we see sort of just to the left of center here where I'm circling the mouse. We're going to take a look at Muscle Shoals. And then there's a view further that's about 51 miles to a couple of peaks and a ridge, Conejo Mountain. And then beyond that is Saddle Peak at 71 miles from his location. And then finally, throughout the course of his video, he's going to be panning past all these oil platforms here, which range from about 13 to 18 miles distance from his observation point. So now we're going to take a look at his video, and I'll be stopping it here and there to comment on what we see. I will speed up some bits of it where he's just panning around. If he's saying something particularly necessary for us to hear, then I'll run it at normal speed for those parts, and I may end up clipping out a minute or two here and there just to save a little time. However, I do have a link in the description to his video, so if anybody's concerned about me cherry picking or anything like that, they're free to go and check out his original.
Saturday, November 25th, 2023, about 2 p.m. Air in the water is about 64 degrees, probably, I don't know, 50% relative humidity, maybe somewhere around 40. I don't know, I'll have to look later. So that's Mesa Lane on the left down there at 6.5 miles. Muscle Shoals in the background at 23, typical low horizon today, apparently. So that little white spot right in the center of the frame, center left, just above the apparent horizon, there's, I think it's around 140, 145 foot elevation.
Okay, so he's given us a view of the coastline near the village of Muscle Shoals and La Conchita. You see that here. We've got the UC Santa Barbara parking lot on the left. We're following this top red line over to Muscle Shoals. There's a few landmarks over here I want to point out that show up in his image, and a few that don't. There's a circular tank up on top of the hill here, we see. And then there's a kind of a ravine that's coming through here, and next to it a gully. And above those are a little string of agricultural buildings. And then running along the coast is Highway 101, the village of Muscle Shoals, and La Conchita, another lovely little village on the coast there. Coming off Muscle Shoals, there's an elevated roadway that comes out to a man-made island called Rincon Island, which is an oil facility. I'll show you a picture of that. This is the elevated roadway coming out to Rincon Island, and you can see some nice tall palm trees. And here's another picture where you see more of the island. We've got some tanks, we've got kind of, I don't know, administrative building, parking building. You can see some small trucks and vans. Gives you an idea. It's about 2.3 acres in size, and we've got these nice tall palm trees. So these are some of the things that he's looking at here. So let's return to his image here. This is 1 minute, 4 seconds into his video. On the upper right, we have that circular tank that was up on top of the hill. There's the ravine in the middle with the gully next to it and the agricultural buildings up above. And then coming down to the water line here, there's Highway 101 and the lovely little villages of Muscle Shoals and La Conchita, which we see right here. Muscle Shoals and La Conchita, including the Rincon Island facility that comes off of Muscle Shoals, which has those nice tall palm trees. But there's only one problem. We don't see them in his picture. They're right there, but we don't see them. We've also got a very unusual sailboat coming across the screen. It seems to be all sail and no boat. It almost appears as if it's sinking. Hopefully it's not sinking. I suspect it's not sinking. I think there's probably another reason why we don't see the bottom part of that boat. So maybe it's time to start doing a little bit of analysis. What do you think? I'm going to go over to Walter Bislin's Earth Curve Calculator and put in some numbers and see what we find. Please pardon me if the sound is not as good as it should be. I'm having a little problem with my microphone, but I'm going to do the best I can here. So we've gone over to Walter Bislin's Earth Curve Calculator, and I've punched in a few numbers. I've set it to miles and feet because we're looking at an American situation here. We've got an observer height of 55 feet and a target distance of 23.2 miles. And I just arbitrarily set the target size at 150 feet. It doesn't really matter what we put there. What we're looking for is what would the hidden distance be based on globe geometry. And for that, I've also set the atmospheric refraction coefficient to 0, which is not what it would be according to generally accepted science, but it does give us the pure geometry of a sphere when we look at that. So if we look at the hidden, which is up here in the top of the screen, hidden 132.9 feet, and we can see that just a little bit of that 150-foot object is poking up above the horizon. So 133 feet hidden for 0 refraction. And then if we set it to standard refraction, tells us that there's 97 feet hidden. I'm rounding to the nearest foot, 97 feet hidden. I want to make one quick point here about refraction. I'm going to discuss it in more detail towards the end of the video. I just want to say that atmospheric refraction, standard atmospheric refraction figure, is based on observations over land, not observations at coastal areas. And in coastal areas, it tends to be a little bit of an underestimate because coastal conditions are highly variable. I'll get into a little more detail on that later on. But we can expect, based on the globe Earth geometry and accepted science on atmospheric refraction, that about 97 feet would be hidden. And that would line up nicely with the observation we can make from his film. From his video here, what we see is that we do not see Muscle Shoals. We do not see La Conchita. We do not see Rincon Island with its tall palm trees. All of those objects are much below 100 feet. We've basically just got 2-story houses at Muscle Shoals, 2-story houses at La Conchita. The roadway's not up all that high. Let's see if we can get some elevations off Google Earth here. Ground elevation, I'm going to go to the back of this road. Put it here. It tells us that that's about 50 feet. We figure a 2-story house on top of that with a roof, that's probably about 80 feet. So we got another 20 feet that would be hidden. So it's not a surprise on a globe Earth that we don't see any of these objects, nor do we see the island here. However, we've got no good explanation yet as to why we don't see them on a flat Earth. On a flat Earth, at that distance, why would we not see Muscle Shoals and not see La Conchita and not see Rincon Island? We also don't see the bottom of this boat here. All we see is its sail. So that's our first little observation. We will continue on now with further into the video.
This platform Hogan at 17.8 miles. Ventura Point, if it's visible back there, about 32 miles. Does not look visible today.
It does not look visible today. I think this is one of my favorite spots in this video. Ventura Point does not look visible today. I wonder which days it is visible. Let's take a look at what's going on Google Earth, and maybe we can find some answers. So you see Santa Barbara parking lot on the left, and he's looking past the Hogan, platform Hogan, which we see on the far right here. Now that's the farthest of the platforms, and I'm going to briefly touch on Hogan, and then I'm going to move on to Ventura. So what we see throughout his video, we're going to see all of these platforms. And now we're looking at the one that's furthest away, and we're going to see them closer and closer as the video goes on. I'm going to take all of those and lump them together at the end and pull screenshots of all of them from the end, because putting them all side by side is interesting, but they're kind of scattered throughout his video. So we'll come back to Hogan itself. That's platform Hogan there. But for now, we're going to look at what's behind platform Hogan. As you can see, what we've got is a nice, crisp, clear horizon line here. The Hogan platform itself has no legs. It's sitting right on the surface of the water. Well, it has legs. It's raised up off the water, and we're not seeing them. For some reason, I can't think of why, we don't see them, and it looks like platform Hogan is more like a boat sitting on the water. Anyhow, behind that, on the left, we see Ventura, and on the right, Oxnard, or I should rather say that on the left, we don't see Ventura, and on the right, we don't see Oxnard, even though they're there. Okay, let's zoom out a little bit. Let's take a look in closer. Here's Ventura and Oxnard. We're looking off over Hogan. Those are pretty big, a couple of nice sized towns. I mean, it's not the sort of thing you can just like blink and miss as you drive past. In fact, at Ventura here, the close end of it, we've got some interesting stuff going along the shoreline. Let's take a look at what this is all about. I'm going to go into Street View here. I'm going to drop our guy right here at this corner. Aha, there's the Aloha Steakhouse and a parking garage. And what is it that we see behind us? Oh my gosh, it's a 12-story hotel. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Yeah, 12 stories. Probably a good 12 feet, maybe 10 or 11 feet floor to floor. So we're talking about something that's somewhere between 130 and 150 feet high, right on the shoreline. One would think, given a clear line of sight, that you'd see such a structure. And we seem to have a clear line of sight. We are going to double check that. We've got a distance of 32.7 miles. It's our yellow line there, passing right past the platforms. And it just misses the point here. And my gosh, we do have a clear line of sight. See, none of this is high enough of an elevation to block our view. according to the elevation lines on Google Earth. We're up at about 10 to 15 feet here. So why is it that we don't see a 140 foot tall building right here, and nothing else of Ventura or Oxnard? I can't imagine why. Can you think of a reason? Let me know in the comments. By the way, if you're enjoying this video, do give it a thumbs up, and if you haven't subscribed, please do subscribe. I'd much appreciate it. So, the case of the missing towns. Was it a tsunami that destroyed Ventura and Oxnard? I didn't read about it in the news. Anyway, the hotel's gone, sunk, disappeared. And that oil platform's looking awfully precarious as well. Okay, time to move on.
There's platform Houchin and Conejo Mountain. Conejo Mountain's 51 miles and 1,800 foot elevation. And that ridge over here from about that sailboat to the right.
Whoa, wait, stop. We've got something happening here we need to look at. I think I see a little sailboat here that's sinking. Again, it looks like it's one of those sailboats that's all sail and no boat. No boat at all, just a sail coming up out of the water. That's really worrisome. I hope that boat's not sinking. We're going to have to call the Coast Guard or something. I wonder, do you think that sailboat's sinking? Or is it just like no boat, just sail? Or is there some other reason why we don't see the bottom part of it? Oh gosh, what a dilemma. Don't know what to do. Okay, well, we're just going to have to keep going, I guess. We've got more to do here, so we'll just have to pretend we didn't notice that sailboat whose bottom is missing.
And that ridge over here from about that sailboat to the right, where it starts to rise up on the left, is called the Never Ever Ridge because it should be below the horizon, but never is. It's 50 miles and generally 1,000 foot elevation. Low spots right there in the center at 900 feet. To the right of Henry there. Saddle Peak's up there to the right in the background. It looks like a saddle. 71 miles and 2789 foot elevation. At least one of the humps. The other one's a little taller, I think. Maybe by 10 feet or something. But yeah, Never Ever Ridge right there. Never below the horizon.
The Never Ever Ridge, because it never ever goes below the horizon. Okay, so why should it? Well, we're looking at a stretch of hills here that the Conejo Mountain was off to the left and it's out of the frame now. And on the right side of the image, we have Saddle Peak here. So we're looking at a stretch that goes between Conejo Mountain and Saddle Peak. I should point out that Saddle Peak is quite a bit further back, 71 miles from Santa Barbara. You can see that there are some hills that are in front of it here, and then there's this stretch along here, and Pablo is saying that this low point is at around 900 foot elevation. So let's go back to Google Earth and take a look at this from above. Okay, we're off. Our observation point is off to the left, and we're looking off to the southeast. And at the far right, we have Saddle Peak, where I've got the mouse circling. And coming up a little ways, we've got Conejo Mountain. So we're looking at a stretch between the line of sight from Saddle Peak to Conejo Mountain. I'm just going to zoom in there. And we see that there's a spot called Dos Vientos Ranch. There's an elevation, a high point there of about 1,360. That was the best I could find based on the elevation indications from Google Earth. At this point, we're looking at 1,360, and then Conejo Mountain over here seems to be about 1,800. And we're looking at a range in between. And yeah, I kind of moused through here, and it looked like about 900 feet made sense, was best I could find. But then I noticed also that if you look at that same stretch here and continue your line of sight, there's another ridge that passes across it. And there are some points that are well above that. I've got 1220. I've got 1580 here. So between that Never Ever Ridge, which is here, and Saddle Peak, there's another whole little range of hills in between. And the high point I was able to find there was 1580. So we might be seeing this range of hills behind his Never Ever Ridge. That might be actually what we're seeing in his image. I'm going to bring his image back up. Right in here. Are we seeing the Never Ever Ridge, or are we seeing the range of hills that's behind it, 1580? Now, I don't have the answer to that, but I can certainly pose the question because it's quite definitely exactly on our line of sight between Dos Vientos Ranch and Conejo Mountain. Elevation 1580, I've marked it here. It's definitely in our line of sight. So Pablo faces a question here. Are we seeing this ridge and the elevation 1580 behind it is not in our view? Or are we seeing the elevation 1580 and Never Ever Ridge is below it? Until he's actually done some proper analysis using geometry to determine, based on the distances and the elevations, until he's done that, the question is open. So, Pablo, here's a little bit of homework for you. Are you sure we're seeing Never Ever Ridge here? Or could it be that we're seeing that range of hills behind it? You're going to need to do some proper analysis to answer that question. Given that, and given that I am a bit skeptical that we're actually seeing your Never Ever Ridge, I have a feeling we might be seeing that 1,580-foot peak beyond. I'm going to grant you the 900-foot for now, and we're going to take a look at the 900-foot in the Earth Curve calculator at that distance and see what conclusion we can come to. Okay, so we've got an observer height of 55 feet, we've got a target distance of 51 miles, and a target size of 900 feet. You see that all down here. I've got standard refraction, and it tells us, if we look at the top, hidden 931.3 feet. So that is slightly more than our 900-foot mountain ridge. And yeah, that you can see that it's just not quite poking up on the horizon here. And yet we do see it in the image. There's no doubt about it. We see something here. So what's the situation? Well, as I'm going to discuss further, standard refraction is an estimate that's based on observations over land, not observations in coastal areas where you're looking over land and water. And among the documents that I've linked to, it does assert that the standard refraction figure is not all that reliable at coastlines. I'll get into that in more detail, but before I get there too far, I'm just going to take the refraction bar here. And I've just clicked on this red slider bar here. And as I move that slider bar, you'll see refraction coefficient K equals 0.1707, and it says standard. I'm going to nudge that just a touch to the right, and you'll see it says medium. Just a touch to the left, and you'll see it says weak. So standard is approximately where medium starts. As I stay in the medium range, our ridge starts to appear above the horizon. I'm still very much within the medium range of refraction, and the ridge becomes more and more visible. So even within a medium refraction coefficient, we can see, oh, now it jumped to strong. Okay, there's the top, there's the end of medium. We can see as much as 251 feet within the medium range of refraction. I'm not talking about strong. I'm not talking about extreme. I'm talking about medium refraction. So being able to see a 900-foot ridge at 51 miles away is not at all out of the question using standard atmospheric refraction science and the globe model. Nothing unusual about it at all. I'm afraid that your Never Ever Ridge is poorly named. It really ought to be called, yeah, most of the time, Ridge. In fact, what you could do is get out there on a day when the refraction coefficient might be lower and see if it actually does drop below the horizon. That would make an interesting exercise as well. But that is also assuming, of course, that we're actually seeing your Never Ever Ridge and not the mountains beyond it. Okay, enough on that point. I think you got the idea. We'll continue on. Okay, I just couldn't quite resist. I had to check for myself, at least briefly. The distance to that 1,580-foot peak was 57.5 miles. I've plugged that into the Earth curve calculator, as well as the target size 1580, and I set refraction at standard just to compare apples to apples. And a considerable portion of that hill is visible. 330 feet is visible according to the curve calculator here. So according to this, that 1,580-foot peak most definitely is visible above and beyond the Never Ever Ridge. Now, Pablo, you still have your homework to do. I'm just challenging you all the more to show you there's good reason to think that what you're calling the Never Ever Ridge is not what we're actually seeing there. I'm not going to take the time. It's your video, and you're the one that needs to do the work to support it. But it did cross my mind. An interesting thing would be to take this whole strip here into a program like Photoshop and try to increase the contrasts between these different layers of hills here. You might find that as you look through this section here that the Never Ever Ridge is actually down here, and that this is the peak that's some 7.5 miles beyond it at an elevation of 1,580. That would be another thing you could do to kind of check your work a little bit. But like I said, I'm not here to check your work. I'm here to peer review. It's your work, so you're the one that needs to fix it if it's broken.
And across the high part of the Conejo Sandstone Peak, Boney Mountain, generally 55 miles and 2,800 to 3,000 feet. There's Platform Hill House, 14.6 miles.
Okay, we're reaching the third and final part of what I wanted to cover here. The first was the disappearance of Muscle Shoals and La Conchita. The second was that Never Ever Ridge. Now, the third part, I want to look at these various oil platforms. So I'm going to just do some clipping and snipping of stuff from the video that we don't need, that's not relevant to that discussion, and I'm going to pull screenshots of the different platforms. And then we're going to take a look at them all side by side, comparing them based on their distance from our observer. I've taken screenshots of the 7 oil rigs from the video. Starting in the top left, we have Platform Hogan, which is the farthest away. And then moving across the top row, and then from left to right on the bottom row, bottom right, we have Platform C, which is the closest. So I've arranged them by distance. So we've got 17.8 miles for Hogan, 17.3 for Houchin, 16.9, 14.6, 14.1, 13.7, and 13.2 for Platform C. Now, if we look at the substructures, the legs of these oil rigs, we look at the one that's farthest away, Platform Hogan, we don't see any of the substructure at all. The same with Houchin, we don't see any of it at all. They're nearly the same distance apart, nearly the same distance from the observer. Houchin does appear to be slightly higher to the water line. Then we get to Henry, which is in the upper right, and we start to see some substructure, beginning to see some substructure there. And then moving on to Hill House at the bottom left. Again, we can pretty clearly see some substructure showing up. And then Platform A, there's definitely significantly more structure visible. Platform B, we see not only the substructure, but we can start to see the guardrail. The very bottom of the structure at the water, the guardrail walkway is sitting right on the water. And then on Platform C, which is 13.2 miles away, the closest oil rig to our observer, we see again that walkway, and it's now slightly above the water. And we can go back and look at photos of these oil platforms taken close up. And what we find is that the walkway in that substructure area, the floor of that walkway is roughly 12 feet above the water line. It varies with the tide. I think 12 feet represents more of a maximum than an average. Probably varies from about 12 feet to 9 feet above the water line. But if we scale from the guardrail on that walkway, which is probably 3 to 3.5 feet high, it looks in the platform C photo as if that walkway is about 3 to 3.5 feet above the water line. So there's a pattern here that Pablo might want to look at. Why is it that the further away the platform, the less of the substructure we see? And the closer to the platform, the more of the substructure we see. It seems to be pretty consistent across all 7 of these images, which were all taken within 3 minutes of each other. We've got the timestamps on the images here, so if anybody wants to go back and look at those timestamps, they're welcome to. So there's another interesting little observation to take away from this bit of video by Pablo. I had promised to say a little bit about atmospheric refraction. I'm going to try to keep it short. I've done a few videos that cover that issue, but I did one specifically on that, and it's this one here at Atmospheric Refraction and Long Distance Observations, Final Statement. In this video, I've got 2 things going on here. I first of all lay out the extent to which atmospheric refraction is a well understood phenomenon and is a long-standing accepted science. So it's used in a lot of areas of life. The telecommunications industry uses it. People who design radar systems use it. It's got a lot of military applications. So if you want to simply ignore atmospheric refraction, if you're doing some kind of long distance observation and you want to ignore atmospheric refraction, you're really putting the cart before the horse if you don't at least describe why you're ignoring it. You need to have a good reason to ignore it. You know, if it was some not well understood phenomenon, if it was some new thing, you might be able to get away with ignoring it, but it's been around since the 1800s. So if you're gonna ignore it, you're making your argument really weak. You need to address your reasons for ignoring it, and beyond that, you need to really show that it's wrong. Now, I've included in this video, in the description, links to a dozen different scientific papers, instruction manuals. We've got things like documents from the U.S. Naval Research Laboratory on how to measure refraction. I've got documents, other military documents that show how it's used in targeting or navigation. I've got a document here from the Royal Navy, similarly, a paper from the telecommunications industry on how refraction affects radio waves. All of these documents are based on the accepted science. So if they're all wrong, you've got a big job on your hands to show that they're all wrong. And you're really going to need to do that if you want to just ignore it. In order to show that they're wrong, first of all, you're going to have to be able to understand them. That means make sense of the math involved, understand the principles behind it, the physics principles behind it, to such an extent that you can find the mistakes and reveal the mistakes. And then you're going to have to develop an alternative approach that is a better representation of reality, what we experience in nature. Once you've done all that, then maybe you can talk about ignoring refraction in your long distance observations. But until then, you really are doing yourself no favors to pretend it doesn't exist. It's hard to take people seriously when they do that. All right, that's enough. Okay, it's time to wrap this up. I just had a couple of very quick little things to say. First of all, if you enjoyed it, please do give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you have not. I always welcome new subscribers. So I have done a few videos on Pablo's dog in the past. It's been a while. I'll put some links in the description. I also wanted to mention that Ruhiv has done an excellent and very thorough debunking of a very similar video by Pablo's dog. In that video, he goes into full detail about measuring the heights of things and where the horizon is and where the seashore is and all of that. All very analytical and very good quality. So I encourage you all to check that out as well. And of course, there is a link in the description. Lastly, I wanted to give the final word here to Seek Truth, Speak Truth, and to Rachie, 5 zeros. Now I'm just going to play a very short video of Seek Truth, Speak Truth. I think it's like 5 seconds long. And then Rachie commented on that. And because her comment might be a little difficult to read on the screen, I'm going to read it out once we've finished with Seek Truth's video.
The Earth is not flat. The end.
Okay, so Rachie says, well, evidence doesn't work, so perhaps this will. Thank you, Rachie. Thank you, Seek Truth. Thank you to all of you watching this today, and have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.